Okay, Tom Albani, GradedPitching.com. Here's a video analysis of Dan, 14 years old, probably 5'9", maybe 5'10", I'd guess about 130, maybe 125. All right, Dan, let's take you up to your leg lift. Okay, so you have a little bit of a counter rotation, which means that you pull the leg back, and typically when pitchers do that, they tend to fly open too soon, and then everything just becomes too rotational, and they lose a lot of linear power in converting that power later in the delivery. And usually what happens with the back knee here is that you torque the knee because you're really twisting it out. You're twisting the upper body around that, and that knee has to turn outward towards second base, and it usually over time will grind the knee down. It'll overstretch the tendons and the ligaments in there. So it doesn't look like it's excessive, but more importantly here, when you lift your leg, what high velocity pitchers do well is that they start shifting their body weight out, and they get the hips to move forward, and they get the mass of the body to start moving down and out at the same rate, and gets the hips lowered, it gets the lower center of gravity, and you really utilize ground forces when you do that. It's just a way of positioning the body better when you get to front foot plant, and when you actually get to leg drive, I should say, before even front foot plant. So if I drew a line straight up here like I usually do, I want to see how far off that line you get. Do you get those hips inside the line, or do you just kind of post up there? So as the leg comes up, you see how your hips are really not inside that line. I mean, I could draw this line right up against your leg. Yeah, your hips are kind of stationed right on top of that line. Better off we get the hips out, get the body moving. Let's take you out about 6 frames later, which would be somewhere about here. Okay, so the first thing that I'd notice is the arm is up too soon. We want to keep that arm down. We know that high velocity pitchers are going to wait for the body to get out, give the body some time to get out into landing before getting that arm up, because what you usually see is pitchers that get the arm up early like you have there will tend to throw early, and they won't separate the phases of the delivery right. So we want to finish the lower phase before we get to the upper phase. Most of the time it happens. I mean, every now and then it doesn't, but when we see guys who get their arm up early, they tend to turn early and throw early and open up everything before the legs are even done. So we'll see how that affects you. But in this position here, we want to take a look at also the back leg, see how it's loading, see if we get the force vector here. The force vector is the ankle to knee relationship. We want to get that ankle to knee relationship down here at an angle like this, somewhere down here, to get us into a good drive. So we want to get there early, and it looks to me like you're standing pretty tall here, and your force vector, your angle of force, which is pretty straightforward. I mean, you want to drive this way, and your angle of force is going this way. So we want to get that angle to be as close as we can in relationship to the destination that we want to drive forces, which is in this direction. So when you have a tall force vector here, usually two things happen when you get to landing. You either, well, probably more than two things, but when you get to landing, when you get to leg drive, you're either going to pop up, or you're just going to land your foot with a very short stride without too much explosiveness at all at the back leg, because you really can't drive when your ankle and your knee are up in that kind of an angle. So when we load our leg here, we want to load the leg at a good flex, but we also want to shift that weight so that we can get our back leg into the proper position to drive. So here we are just before we drive. Typically this would be about the 12th frame. Now when you got that arm up early, look at how high it is above the shoulder. Your elbow's way up, hyperangulation there, and that's when the elbow gets way up above the shoulder. You get some shoulder impingement that can come from that. So be careful with that. We'll fix that as we get our legs to be a little bit more dynamic. So here's where we are in the lower body phase here. This is the drive. Let me change that there. Here's our drive phase, okay? We're going to drive from here to here. What we want to look for is ankle extension, knee extension, hip extension, so we can see some hip and shoulder separation. We want to see the lower body basically power here at this position. And at kids mostly your age, they don't really do that very well, so they'll just turn the knee over, the heel will pop up, and they'll get a little bit of some hip movement, but it's not dynamic, it's not a good transfer of energy because there's not much of a drive coming from the foot. So you'll see the knee kind of cave in, it'll lose torsion here, so it'll cave in this way, and there won't be too much of a drive. And I can tell because when you put down here, the front foot, put it down, the back foot is still on the rubber. So got to get a lot more dynamic in this back leg. All right, so here we are now at front foot plant. Let's see how this transfers to the trunk. So here's your trunk. We want to see how much power transfers to the trunk by measuring some trunk angles. Now, here at foot plant, just to keep in mind here, when you don't get the hips out and you lead with the face and you lead with the shoulders like you did, in your delivery from the beginning, you can see right there your face is even way out in front of your belly button. You lead that way, this arm is going to swing up, right? Everything's going to be angled downward this way. The face, the upper body is going to be angled, and your shoulders aren't, your hips are not really under your shoulders. Your shoulders are now tilted forward from your hips, and that's going to slow down your trunk rotation. It's going to slow down your hip speed as well. So that is the importance also of leading with the hips. Okay, so let's see how this transfers. We brace up the front knee right about there. Let's see, right about there is where we brace up. So you definitely have early trunk rotation. You shouldn't really be in rotation right there. You should still be back here. But because you had so much trunk tilt, I've already lost your glove side. Your shoulder's gone. I can't see your shoulder. I can barely see your arm. Now the chest is going to lean forward even more. But if we take an angle of this, at full external rotation, you are at about a 49 degree. It's not bad. The only thing is you didn't get there by transferring forces. You got there by leaning the trunk forward. All right, let's see where you are at ball release. Okay, ball release, you're down to 35. It's a really good angle to be at, but again, we want to get there by utilizing forces efficiently, not by leaning the trunk forward. So if you really want your velocity to increase, we need to work on a more vertical trunk, leading with the hips, landing the front foot with the shoulders still closed to give the body time to receive forces from the ground. But let me change that. So the forces coming up off the ground here need time to shoot up and then deliver the trunk explosively from that position, where yours is already, leaning forward and kind of using gravity to provide its forces because you're going down a hill. So kind of, falling through gravity there. Okay. Now, one thing here, just to mention quickly, the elbow, the hand coming in towards the head right there really puts a lot of stress on the elbow. And then when you're turning here, it does kind of buy you some time to get the hips cleared a little bit more. But again, you're not using power from the backside to do that. So the arm is kind of laying back there behind the head in a real vulnerable position there for the elbow to take that kind of torque, that kind of load when you're turning the body. So those are possible injury issues in the future that we should, as we fix the lower body, we will fix the arm as well. So it kind of will fix itself once you fix the main issues of the delivery. Okay, so let's just quickly recap here. We need to get the body to shift out a little bit more, maybe even stay away from a little counter rotation. We need to get a good flex in the back knee, calm the throwing arm down a little bit instead of getting it up so high, so early, where now you're going to pull it up over the shoulder and really impinge that shoulder. We want to work on driving this back leg a little bit harder. So more leg drive, better trunk. Instead of leaning forward, keep it more vertical. You land pretty well. I mean, I will say you land pretty good, and your knee braces up very quickly, which is awesome. And that's going to be great for converting that power up the trunk, but we got to get the trunk more vertical. All right. So there we go. Now you come off the ground here pretty high with the foot, and that's typically because your stride is not as long as it could be because you lack the back leg power. So we improve the back leg power, we improve stride length. The longer that stride is, the quicker the hips will turn, the lower center of gravity you'll have, and that foot's not going to come up so soon like that because it's going to have to balance you out as you elongate the stride. All right, I hope that helps you out. I'll put this up on the site. Okay.